welcome to today's tutorial. Today we're going to learn a really fun camera to use. It's called the Blackmagic 6K cinema camera. And what's really nice about this camera is that it shoots in RAW, which means that you can shoot and change your ISO, you can change your white balance, all after the fact. So if you're filming something very sensitive and you can't go back and change it, you can always shoot in RAW and go back in DaVinci Resolve, and you can make those minor adjustments in exposure with your ISO and your white balance as well, and it will look just like you did it in camera. So here's a really nice looking camera for us to use. Another great benefit of this camera here is that this is a lot cheaper than the new Pixis Blackmagic camera, and it shares the same sensor and the same specs internally as the Pixis. However, the Pixis has an easier body to use because it's like a little box and it's easy to rig things up. Like for example, I have a top handle on this machine, as you can see, and the Pixis is just smaller and a little lighter and a little bit more compact. However, if you want a camera that just works right off the bat, you just need to put a lens on it, and you can add a cage like I have in this one to make it a little easier. And you just go ahead and turn on the on switch right here on top, and then it powers on within a few seconds. So pretty cool. So it takes these kind of batteries. These are called NPF 550 batteries, and these batteries last about 30 minutes to about 45 minutes, so not very long, but it's enough to get a little bit of shooting done. And the reason why is because this camera is just so powerful. So put a battery in, make sure we close our door right here on the bottom, and then turns on the camera. And as you can see, just within a few seconds, we have the camera on. Remove the lens cap, and you can see we have the settings. The best part of this camera is that we have all these touch screen windows, easy to navigate, easy to see what you're doing, easy to move things around, easy to just click and change settings on the fly, just like you were using a smartphone. So this is a great transition from a smartphone to an actual professional cinema camera, because you have so much flexibility in shooting with this one. There are some features that the smartphone has that this camera doesn't have. For example, on a smartphone, you can have an autofocus, and unfortunately the autofocus, it doesn't really work in this camera. So for example, as you can see, the image is a little dark, so let me bring up my ISO, and right here you can see the image is a little blue. So what I want to do is I want to white balance my camera based on these lights. So the lights I have today in the studio are 5600 Kelvin, which is a unit of measurement, which is basically a very similar color temperature, which is the color of the sun. So as you can see now, it looks a little better. This is a blue table, so you might have a little bit of trouble seeing. But the best part again about this camera is how versatile it is, and how long you can shoot for hours and hours and hours and never worry about overheating. Like on the smartphone, like for example on my iPhone over here, on my iPhone, the problem is that after some time it starts overheating because there's no fan on it, and there's no heat sink. It's just a titanium aluminum construction, and that will dissipate the heat, but not as fast as an actual fan. So this camera has a fan right in here, and it breathes right down here. All right, so let's talk about this camera and how to use it. So the way they use this camera is simply just grab the camera. Okay, and you want to make sure you have a charged battery. So the battery's compartment is right here on the bottom. So here's the battery. When you look at the battery, look how there's these two little pins on the bottom here. There you go. Can you see those little pins right there? Those little pins tell you the directionality of the battery, which means that this has to go on the bottom. So if you look inside your camera here, you can see that there's some pins inside. So you want to make sure you align those correctly inside until you hear click, and then you close it. The next part is that On this newer model, it has on this side over here, it has the memory slot. So the memory slot has changed for the cinema camera compared to the older camera like you see behind me with the 6K Pro. It has a memory card right here. It's called a CF Express Type B camera. CF Express Type B is a new type of technology which is much better because it's faster, more reliable, and most importantly, look how strong this is. This is not a little thin piece of plastic like an SD card where you can just bend it and the whole thing could break and fall apart. This one is made of aluminum, super strong, and most importantly, super fast. So you can record all those very high quality raw files. So here's a new CF Express Type B. The way that you put it in is you slowly put it in. If you feel pressure, it means you're doing it incorrectly. So the sticker goes on the inside, and then you feel a little pressure and a click, and there you go. The next thing about this camera is the lens. So the lens, I usually have it mounted already on my camera, but if I want to switch lenses, you can just unplug your lens by clicking this little lever. It comes right out. This is a Canon lens. As you can see, it says Canon right over here. This is a Canon lens, a 24x105 full frame f4 lens. This is part of the L series. The L series uses much better glass, so the image quality is even better. In order to put a DSLR type lens on a mirrorless camera like this one, you need something called an adapter. So if you're going to pick up one of these cameras up, make sure that you buy the right adapter for your camera and lenses you have. For example, this one uses an L mount. L mount is something called an L mount alliance, where we have different brands like Leica, Panasonic, that work together in creating one type of mount, which is this one right here. It's called an L mount. And I can use L mount mirrorless lenses, or I can outfit my old ones, which is this Canon right here, this old Canon one, which will work great on it. So what you do is you align the two dots together, and then you click it, and then now I can put any EF lens that I want to use. So I grab it and I drag it and I click it in place. All right, so now let's turn on the camera. So when you turn on the camera, it's right here on the top. There's a button to turn it on, and then you look at your screen. You have buttons, you have different buttons to do different things on it. However, there's a big touch screen here in the back that you can also use that. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you are shooting at 24 frames per second. Most of us like to create cinematic videos, so we want to make sure we choose 24 frames per second. If, however, you want to do like some slow-mo, then you would have to change this frames per second to a higher number. So for example, you could shoot at 60 frames per second and then slow it down, but this particular camera, when you're shooting at this particular mode, will go to 30 for this particular setting. All right, so our next one is our shutter. So our shutter is how fast is the image capturing? Is it like really quick or a little slow? So if it's really quick, the image is going to be super sharp. If it's really slow, it's going to be blurry. So which one do you want to use? So the majority of the time, your shutter should be at 180 degrees, which means double the frame rate. So if we're shooting at 24, it'll be 48 shutter speed. However, this is a cinema camera, so you have the option of using a shutter angle, and the benefit of a shutter angle than a shutter speed is that the shutter angle is done for you already. So I can change my 24 frames per second to 60 frames per second, and all of a sudden, because I'm at 180 degree, it's going to double my frame rate automatically. So sometimes if you're shooting at 24, then 30, and then 50, then 60 frames per second, you have to do the math in your hand, which is not too bad. You should double it, and you have to figure out what shutter speed you should be at. But with 180, you can just set it and forget it and get a really good cinematic speed. So for example, right now we're shooting at 180 degrees, which means that the image is going to have a natural blur. So when I move my hand in front of my face, you'll see a natural blur. Next one is our iris. Our iris, also known as our aperture. Iris is more of the film term, aperture is more of the photo term, but they mean the same exact thing. That controls the opening and closing of your lens. So as you can see here, when I close it, it's completely dark. When I open it, now you can start seeing a little bit more of the table. So if I put this lens cap right here in front, you can see a little bit the lens cap right there. Our next one is ISO. So our ISO is our light sensitivity, also known as gain, and you have different numbers to pick from. The main thing here is that ISO or gain is like salt on your steak. So if you put too much salt on your steak, it doesn't taste good. And what happens when you have ISO too high, you get something called video noise. So if you look here, you can see how everything churned like this. So this is also because I have another setting which is called focus peaking. So if you can see closely, you can see all this video noise, which is basically like looking like an old VHS tape. So we don't want noise because noise will degrade our image, just like too much salt will degrade our steak. Therefore, what we want to do is we want to keep the ISO as low as possible to get the cleanest image. So on this particular camera, when you're shooting in RAW, you have basically two settings. The best settings for dual gain ISO is advertised 400 and 3200. So basically what that means is that you're going to get the cleanest image at 400 and also at 3200. That's according to the website on Blackmagic. However, I've tested this further and the actual numbers are going to be a little bit lower than that. So if you test it out, you won't see it. So if we go down to 100, notice how the blacks look completely black in this shot. So if you look right here, you can see how the blacks look completely black, and that's what we're looking for. And if you go ISO 1250, that's your second base, which means you can go up to 1250 and still get pure black. But if you go down to 400 or 800, notice how there's a little bit of grain coming into the image. So just be aware of that. Your white balance is another great feature that you have in your camera, which you're telling the camera what color is white. And so white can be determined by the type of light. So for example, if you have sunlight, you have this little button here, you click sunlight, which is 5600 Kelvin. If you have tungsten, which is 3200 Kelvin. So those are the main two. So indoors, like house lights, it's 3200, and outdoors with sun, it's 5600. So if you just remember those two, the majority of the time you're going to get great whites that look really white and not orange. If you want to go down a little further, you have fluorescent lighting. For example, in a classroom setting, you can use fluorescent, or if you're in the shade, it changes a little bit. So it's use the shade, which is 4500 Kelvin. If it's cloudy outside, you got to go up to 6500 Kelvin. And then you can also do a custom white balance, and you can decide the number yourself. And another way to white balance is to choose custom. It's called right here. Let me show you again. So you go automatic white balance, AWB, which is not automatic. So what you do is you point the camera at something white, and then you click update. So if I do it right now on something blue, all my colors are going to look off because the camera thinks that is white. So that's basically in a nutshell how to use the camera. And we also have other features that are really helpful. So for example, we have the buttons right here, ISO on top. So if you can look right here, there's a button called ISO. You can push that for ISO, you can push that for shutter and white balance. So you can click between the two and it activates what's on the screen. And most importantly, how to record. So how to record is, first of all, you grab your camera and then you zoom into your subject all the way in until you have a nice clear image. And so you usually zoom into their eyes, and then you pull focus. So here's your focus ring. So you pull focus onto the eyes until they're completely focused, and then you zoom out to the shot you want. Now you're ready to shoot. So you double check your settings. So double check your settings. It's 24, 180. Your iris needs to be changed based on how much light, and ISO also needs to be changed on how much light. So the exposure triangle has three parts to it. It has shutter speed, aperture, which is iris, and ISO. So you have to do a balance between the three. Because we want to make the image look normal, the shutter speed is going to be our constant, so 180 degrees. So what we have left is the iris and the ISO. So what you want to do is you want to bring the ISO as low as possible to get the cleanest image in the darkest blacks. However, The issue is that in order to do that, you also have to have a lens that opens up so much to let light in onto the sensor. If not enough light goes onto the sensor, then the problem is that the image gets dark. So then you have to bring up your ISO and everything turns grainy. Therefore, what you want to do is you want to go to your iris. You want to open it up as much as possible. You can let the most light in. As you can see, also it has a beautiful swivel. So I can bring it down here and I can swivel it up so you can see it from the top. I can zoom into my subject, pull focus, and then white balance is going to be 5600 Kelvin. ISO, we're going to bring it down to 1250, and see, as you can see, the image still looks kind of dark. So now I can't bring down my iris more because that's where the lens opens up the most. So my only tool left is to bring up my ISO, and my ISO, as you can see, is bringing much more light into my image, which is I'm focusing on these beautiful Hollyland Mars Lark 2 that I've been using right now to record this audio. So if you ever want to buy some Hollyland Lark 2 M2 wireless microphones, they're really great. They're really small. They just hang right here, and as you can see, you can hear that tapping. That's me on this mic. Hollyland Mars 2, another great little feature that you have here. They open up. It's just like an iPod case. Goes in. You have two mics in there. Really small, really easy to use. And I can just pull focus on that. As you can see, pull focus. And then, as you can see, we have our subject. It looks nice. And then, finally, the last step is to push record. So you push record by pushing this big red button here. Notice how it turns red here, and there's a tally light in the front. As you can see, there's a tally light right here in the front. Turns red, which means you're recording. And then you push it again. You can even push it on the screen, which is amazing. And then to play back, you click play. And now you can see it. Notice how it turns red and here. There you go. That's in a nutshell how to work with the new Blackmagic cinema camera 6K. There are lots of great features on this camera. We just basically talked about just the basic ones to get you set up. And so most importantly is to like and subscribe the video so I can make more videos like this. And maybe one day I'll see you in Hollywood as well. Thanks. Bye-bye.